Please, stay seated. Stay seated. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. The reason we're late, it's all my fault. I know that's a shock. But I must tell you, I couldn't resist. Two of the children of a man and a woman who got me started back in 1972, actually 1970, were in town, and I showed them the office, and I apologize for keeping you waiting. I really am. Look, this Competition Council is an important part of Bidenomics, my plan to build an economy from the middle out and the bottom up. And I think it's working. I think it's working. For example, over the past year, we've seen dramatic decline in inflation. It dropped by 2/3 down to 3% at a time when unemployment has been below 4% for the longest stretch in 50 years. I've rejected the notion that the reason for inflation is the only way you get inflation down is reduce employment and/or reduce wages. Remember what the experts said: to get inflation under control, we need to lower those wages and drive up unemployment. But I've never bought that. I don't think the problem in America today is too many people working or working people are making too much money. Instead, we focus on getting Americans into the workforce by fixing a broken supply chains and lowering cost. The fact is, companies made record high profits during the pandemic. And now those costs are coming down, and so is inflation. We need to keep bringing down the markups and their margins and continue making progress on inflation. And promoting competition helps lower costs as well. Now, I've said this before, I'm a capitalist, but I have no problem with companies making reasonable profits. But it's got to be a fair competition for that to occur. Before I took office, more than 3/4 of the American industries had become more concentrated than they were before. Often just a handful of companies dominate the marketplace. Bidenomics is about increasing competition, not stifling competition. When companies have to compete, it means lower prices, fair wages, and more innovation. That's why 2 years ago I signed an executive order to create this council to increase competition and lower costs for American households. For example, we made hearing aids available over the counter for as little as $200 a pair instead of thousands of dollars, and capped the price of insulin at $35 on those on Medicare, and thus saving folks hundreds of thousands of dollars over time. You know, we're taking aim at non-compete clauses, which prevent 30 million Americans, from security guards to retail workers, from getting jobs in the same field. And there's no rationale for that. It's not like they have trade secrets. And we're cracking down on junk fees across industries, including banking, concert, airlines, and junk health insurance plans. Folks are tired of being played for suckers. They're just tired of being played for suckers. And it's about basic fairness. Today, we're taking more action. First, the Department of Agriculture, and you'll hear from the Secretary in a moment, together with bipartisan attorneys general in 31 states and the District of Columbia, are ramping up enforcement of antitrust and consumer protection laws in food and in agriculture. For example, just 4 supermarket companies control over a third of the market nationwide. And it's even more concentrated at the local level, where consumers have had even fewer stores to choose from. Groceries in consolidated markets charge you more because you have nowhere else to shop. Now, the Department of Agriculture and partners in the states are going to make large corporations making sure they cannot artificially raise food prices through price fixing and price gouging. Second, we're cracking down on hidden junk fees in rental housing. Folks at home know having to pay $100 or more just to fill out a rental application, even though the credit check can cost as little as $20. The application fees can be a profit center for landlords. Some accept applications from hundreds of potential tenants, far more than they could seriously consider renting to, just to collect these fees. And then some charge surprise fees just to pay your rent online, or fees for services that should be included in rent, like mail sorting and pest control. It's simply not right, and we're going to move on it. Now, several real estate companies serving tens of millions of renters, including Zillow, Apartments.com, AffordableHousing.com, they've joined us to take action against these junk fees. They're updating their websites to show renters all the hidden fees up front so you can know the full cost before they sign a lease. Third, this morning the Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission released their new merger guidelines. Anti-competitive mergers can hurt people and drive up costs as well. For example, hospital mergers have led to price increases of 20% or more. Health insurance mergers have caused premiums to go up 7% on average. All told, this kind of industry concentration costs a typical American household an estimated $5,000 a year. And I've said when I signed the executive order, we cannot accept bad mergers that lead to mass layoffs, higher prices, and fewer options for workers and consumers. I'll close with this. To get this meeting started, I've said before, capitalism without competition isn't capitalism, it's exploitation. I'm grateful to this Competition Council as we keep building this momentum to reduce cost and deliver more results for the American people. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Secretary Vilsack. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you know, Mr. President, for far too long, agricultural policy has been focused on getting big or get out, resulting in a trend toward bigger farms and fewer farmers. Farmers and ranchers have been squeezed by corporate concentration in input industries like seeds, fertilizers, and even farm equipment on the one side, and on the other side by consolidation in the channels for selling agricultural products like meat and poultry processors and grocery retail markets. That's why USDA is proud to support President Biden's competition executive order to stem the tide of increasing consolidation and promote competition in America's food and agricultural markets. This is going to help lower food costs for American families while also giving farmers and ranchers more and better options. Today, we're excited to announce the launch of an historic agricultural competition partnership with 32 bipartisan state attorneys general, including the District of Columbia, to leverage both federal and state resources to combat anti-competitive and anti-consumer behavior. We're pooling both our investigative resources and our legal authorities. That's going to enable us to better crack down on anti-competitive and anti-consumer practices that raise prices at the grocery store and deprive farmers of a fair return. This enforcement partnership will address the lack of competition in a range of markets, including consolidation of grocery markets that are now dominated by large chains, consolidation in the meat and poultry processing, among others. Now, this initiative, Mr. President, builds on USDA's broader regulatory efforts to help farmers get their fair share of the consuming food dollar, while supporting rural communities and lowering costs for American consumers. And we're already seeing the impact these changes are having, starting to have on American farmers. Just a few weeks ago, I met with business owners in Iowa to announce USDA's investments in 15 additional nationwide projects that will expand independent meat and poultry processing capacity. One of these projects, Cattlemen's Heritage Beef, will establish a 500,000 square foot facility in Mills County, Iowa. Now, it's projected to process 1,500 head of cattle per day from small, family-owned operations that have been shut out in the past. Now, this plant's going to create over 800 jobs, and Mr. President, the average wage will be higher than 90% of the jobs in Iowa today. We're also working swiftly to finish a suite of robust new rules under the Packers and Stockyards Act that will protect independent farmers and ranchers from abuse by the dominant meat and poultry processors. And we're also committed to finishing our work ensuring that when you see product of the USA on a food product, consumers will know that everything done to raise and process that product was done here at home. And finally, we've established a farmer seed liaison initiative, which will provide farmers a voice and greater transparency in seed patents to help provide choice and lower costs for producers. We look forward to our ongoing partnerships with agencies here today, as well as with state governments, to safeguard the freedom of farmers, ranchers, and other industries from unfair practices and anti-competitive conduct in concentrated, consolidated markets. And we'll continue to be encouraged by the bipartisan discussions in Congress to increase competition and market fairness for farmers and ranchers. The fact that we see this bipartisan support from local to the federal level, and the fact that we've increasingly seen private companies come forward to answer your call, Mr. President, tells me that under your leadership, we're seeing a change in this culture. The tide is turning so that American consumers, workers, and farmers can't just be taken advantage of without consequence. And our small businesses, farmers and ranchers, have a fighting shot again with this president on their side. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you all very much.
Mr. President, do you consider Travis King a defector?
Out this door here.
Sir, do you
Thank
consider
very much.
Travis, do you believe Travis
We're gonna make our way
King,
out through these two doors, please. Thank you very much.
sir, do you believe
We're gonna
Travis
make our
King
way out
intended to
here.
defect?
Thank you very much, Jimmy. We're going to make our way out here. Thank you very much.